This was the first year I started growing brassicas from seed, and that includes cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. And I put them all here in my raised bed, and there's some potatoes on the side over here. And I definitely planted them way too close together. I started the seeds indoors, and the ones that looked healthy I brought out here and transplanted. And there were more healthy ones than I had space, and I couldn't bring myself to space them properly, so I ended up overcrowding them, but I was able to harvest some broccoli and some cauliflower, and they stopped growing more stuff, so I just took them out. And a couple weeks ago, I harvested one of the cabbages, and it turned out really, really well. We used it to make coleslaw, and we have some extra, and now I want to see if I can harvest another one of the cabbages, because I'm sure it's ready too. And I think I'm gonna use the leftover and the new harvest and make some sauerkraut. So I started a couple different types of cabbage, but the one I had already harvested, and this one too, are Jersey Wakefield cabbage, and you can see that they're very pointy, almost cone shaped, which is pretty distinct. They're called Jersey Wakefield because they were first grown in New Jersey in, I think, 1840 in Jersey City, and I'm in Essex County, New Jersey, so that's like 10-15 miles from me, which I think is pretty neat. So I'm going to harvest this, and I'm going to bring it inside and cut it up, and hopefully have a decent amount to make some sauerkraut with. So the way that you're supposed to harvest cabbage, well, I guess there's no, supposed to that, but the way that it's recommended is to kind of pull down the outer leaves and then get in with a knife and just cut it as far down as you can. And the idea is, if you don't cut off the leaves while you're doing that, that you might get more cabbage growing there if you do it that way. I've tried it before in the past and have never really had much luck, but it doesn't hurt to try. The way that you're supposed to tell if a cabbage is ready is you kind of press on the top here, and if it feels solid and firm, then it's ready to go. So I'm just going to take off the leaves that are not kind of sticking close to the head, and there is this nice cone-shaped little head of cabbage. Okay, so I thought I had some more cabbage left over from previous time, but that got used up, so I'm just going to use a smaller batch because it scales just as well for any amount. So I'm just going to take this, split it in half. You can see, looks great. Looks just like any cabbage you would get anywhere else, except for it has that cone shape. So next, I'm just going to take out the core. And then remove any little bits that look like some bugs were at them. And just chop it up. Okay. We'll do the same thing for the other half. actually, before I forget, I'm going to reserve a couple of these larger leaves. Now move this all to a bowl and see how much we actually have. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of garlic in there too, before I forget. I already had this peeled. Sauerkraut is just the cabbage specifically, but you can put anything you want in it. And so I put a little garlic and a little bit of peppercorn. Not much because this is a pretty small batch. Alright, so 330 grams. And for sauerkraut, the kind of rule of thumb that I've seen is you want 2% salt. So for 330 grams, 1% would be 3.3 grams. And then so 2% is 6.6 grams. So let's clear this out. I'm going to add 6.6 grams. It's not much for a small batch. Okay, that's good. And then it's just a matter of mixing it all together, kind of breaking down the cabbage a little bit. And as the salt mixes in with the cabbage, it will draw the water that's in the cabbage out of it, and that basically makes its own brine. And that's what it'll ferment in to make it sauerkraut. And already I can feel a ton of moisture coming out of this. I'm just going to mix it together a little bit more, and I'm going to let it sit for a while. Okay, I think the salt is distributed pretty well, so I'm just going to let it go for now, and then I'll come back in a little bit and mix it again, maybe 1 or 2 more times, and then I'll jar it up. So the cabbage has been sitting here for a while. I mixed it up a few more times. It's been about an hour and a half or something, and I think you'll be able to see that all this liquid has started to come out, and as I tamp it down, more is going to come out. So all I'm going to do now is just take it and put it into a regular quart-sized mason jar. And actually, I don't want to lose any of it, so I'm just going to do it by hand. And I don't want to spill any of this liquid, because the liquid is the brine that it's going to be fermenting in. Okay. And I'll just pour the remaining in there. And the important thing is that we want all of this to be down. We want to mash it down as much as we can so that the level of the brine rises up above the cabbage. What I'm going to use, I have another jar here that'll fit in. And I'll just tamp it all down. getting tamped down enough and the brine's getting above it. It's its own water, so it should always work out. And then what I'm going to do is to try to make sure the cabbage doesn't start trying to float above. I'm going to take some of the reserved extra leaves from earlier, and I'm just going to put them in such a way. It's easier with a bigger batch because it's closer to the top, but this will help somewhat. Alright. And I'm just going to put this back in. I'm actually going to leave this in here as a weight. You can get specifically weights for these, but I don't have any, so I'm just going to use this other jar. And then I have this special lid that allows you to put in an airlock. And as this ferments, it's going to release gas, and to make sure it doesn't explode, put an airlock in, and it just has some water in it. And, oh, I forgot there's a piece that you need for the airlock to fit in airtight. Okay. This goes in here. And now with this amount, it's a small jar, so it wasn't going to really risk exploding anyway, but just good practice, and there it is. Only that top leaf should be above the brine at all, and I can just discard that. And then this will sit and ferment at room temperature, or maybe I'll bring it into the basement and I'll ferment at a little bit cooler temperature for a week or two, and then I'll give it a taste. And when it seems like it's good, we like it where it is, then I'll just throw it in the fridge, and yeah, this is enough for maybe 2 or 3 meals, so depending on what we're eating. So just a small batch, but I think it's worth it. And that's that.